Hey guys, this is Gadget, the Layman Atheist, with a report on Dr. Brad Harrob's Atheism's Attack on America seminar. Atheism's Attack on America. A few months ago, that was the seminar that was announced on the radio that made my heathen ears perk up. It was just one of the subjects covered by Dr. Brad Harrob in an ongoing tour of seminars. His other topics covered all our favorite arguments about the age of the earth and how Darwin sucks and how evolution is this terrible, terrible lie. Atheism's Attack on America struck me as something slightly different. It's one thing to ignore evidence and even twist what one can to protect what they perceive as a threat to their safety blanket. That's fine, it's a right to be ignorant and wrong. But it was apparent that the entirety of that speech that night was a gross generalization and a vilification of a huge community of people. Who was this guy, and why did he feel that he properly stood to explain and represent the secular community? He's obviously having an entire seminar bad-mouthing what I know to be mostly great and interesting people. Any progress we have done to improve the stigma of being an atheist, this guy was undoing each week, and each week to a new audience. So I printed small flyers and placed them in the car windows of the people who attended that seminar in an effort to counter its obvious content. They basically stated that what they had just observed was a misrepresentation of who we were. Here's my contact if you would like to ask any questions, etc., etc. While placing the flyers, I overheard a little bit, and my suspicions were confirmed. In just the little bit that I heard, his words were highly divisive, and you could almost smell the tone of offended aggression and certainty float off of his words. This was a majority of why I began doing the Layman Atheist. You couldn't expect Dr. Brad Harrob to properly represent atheism, and in actuality, it would be pretentious for me to act as if I could. However, I felt I could represent at the least an approachable and civil contact and provide practical explanations for anybody who cared to know more about the dark side. About a week ago, I saw that Dr. Brad Harrob's seminar was making its way near me again. I live in Huntsville, and the seminar was being held in a small blink of a town called Noah, Tennessee. I was strongly considering attending the seminar to see more exactly of what flavor of BS was being spread to the masses. Now, I've had some correspondence with Dr. Brad Harrob via email and through TLA, so I could still go and be incognito. When I looked into the church that it would be held at, I found that if I attended, I would be one of many people packed into a church about the size of a shoebox. But with an additional nudge from the dynamic duo of JT and Christina, it was game on. And now to the meat and potatoes of this whole shindig. When I walked into the church, the seminar was already underway. I braced for impact, and I found a seat in the front row about 10 feet from the dock.
Since 1963, the United States of America has become the world leader in violent crime, divorce rate, teenage pregnancy, illegal drug use, and we've got the highest illiteracy rate of any industrial nation. All of that since we removed God and we injected evolution.
Oh, the layers. Just in the sentence alone, where do I start? How exactly does he imply that the concept of evolution encourages these things? He states evolution as a replacement for God, which in that alone is comparing apples to oranges. But remove God from what? Schools? As far as I know, in public schools, religious studies are typically electives and usually are a study of multiple religions. Classes who push a specific religion exclusively have never been common practice. So God can't really be removed from somewhere he doesn't exist. See what I did there? I take the accuracy of all that is listed at face value, but it very well and most likely is true. But what he fails to mention is that most child molestations, abuses, teenage pregnancies, abortions are done by Christians. Christians have been found to be more likely to condone torture, And how does he explain that the least religious countries are also the lowest in things like crime and violence? And finally, if these things be true, and since they seem to be independent from religiosity slash straying away from the Lord, what are we doing wrong and how can we fix it?
Several months ago while you were sleeping, they passed a bill known as H.R. 1913, a hate speech crime bill. Now, that sounds like a good thing. We wouldn't want somebody being hateful. And it is good until you actually read the vague wording of the bill, and you learn that this bill gives preferential treatment to homosexuals and pedophiles. In fact, it is going to make it illegal for folks to speak out against that. And you kind of shrug your shoulders and you say, yeah, okay, so what? Folks, listen to what I'm saying. We're on the cusp of passing legislation for the very first time in the United States of America that's going to make it illegal for a preacher of the gospel to get in a pulpit like this one and preach the whole counsel of God. That's where we are. In fact, I think I will see in my lifetime the government encroaching into the church. And here's the first thing I think they're going to do. I think they're going to say, if you want to keep your nonprofit status, here's some things you can't talk about. And we're going to have to decide, do we want to be the government church or do we want to be the church of Christ? You see, there is a difference.
All right, first off, if the wording of the bill gives preferential treatment to any group of people, it's most likely because it was written in light of some things that happened at the time. Just in the fact that it was preferential and not exclusive implies that the overall bill criminalizes hate speech for everyone, which in my opinion still holds as a step in the right direction. So let me get this straight. We pass a bill criminalizing hate speech, and you see that as a threat to your church? What does that say about your church? We know hate speech is wrong, now illegal, so if your church preaches hate, stop it, or it'll eventually be stopped for you. I can almost guarantee that you will always be able to preach till you're blue in the face about your imaginary friends, though I can't promise that if your imaginary friends tell you you should hate, hurt, or impose something on another because of their differences, that your church isn't at risk. What's that? You say the government's going to encroach into the church? Are you implying we should, have separation of church and state? Somebody should get on that. As long as the government is in some resemblance of good standing, and as long as your church doesn't directly encourage acts that have been generally accepted as wrong to the extent to become illegal, preach on, brother. The day the government makes an innocent and positive church illegal is the day many of us heathens will be standing right beside you defending our universal rights.
The same time we're telling a guy to get rid of the Ten Commandments out of his courtroom, our nation is putting into place a plaque in Sacramento Park, California, honoring the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender veterans killed in action. Now, folks, get that for just a moment. At the same time we're removing the Ten Commandments, we're putting into place a plaque that is honoring the sin of homosexuality. Church, listen to me. That's wicked. And God will not allow it to go on forever.
In the case of the Ten Commandments, the situation gets hairy pretty quick. But I would have to say that the options we have hit on an all or nothing policy. On government land include all religious symbols, which would be a nightmare, or don't allow any at all, with the understanding that government is supposed to take the stance both independent and universal to persons of any faith or lack thereof. As for the plaque in California, the plaque is to honor the veterans first and foremost. Given the community the plaque is located, it's completely understandable that part of the message is that we haven't forgot your service just because of your sexual orientation. We want to make sure that you know we appreciate the members of the LGBT community who serve their country. Even in the context of Christianity and in the pretext of homosexuality being a sin, the plaque is honoring the service of the veteran independently of what they do in their off time. When you put on the uniform, you are no longer black, white, Asian, gay, straight, etc. You are an American service member. Enough said. Dr. Harab then goes on a tangent about the similarities between Greece and America and how the Olympics we worship the body. He tries to make a point about how the athletes in the Olympics wear skimpy uniforms and how the first Olympics were performed naked. Oh no! I hope our society doesn't fall because someone's showing a bit of skin. The humanity! What would make Brad happy? Seeing a gymnast doing a floor exercise in a burqa? Come on. Grow up. The athletes wear just about exactly what they have to do to get the job done. You getting a tickly sensation in your pants every time you watch the Olympics is your issue, not the rest of the world.
Do we do that today? Folks, take a look at commercials. It blows my mind how you can see a commercial for rice, of all things. Rice is not the most sexy thing in the world, folks. And yet they've got these two people fawning over each other over some white rice. Why? Because they worship the body. Number two, they also...
Speak for yourself, sir. I love me some rice. And if loving rice is wrong, I don't want to be right. He continues to explain how commercials are over-sexualized and that wearing makeup or doing any similar maintenance is one of the wrong things we're doing. I'd agree that commercials get a little ridiculous at times, but that's because sex sells. Why does it sell? Because we're driven to survive and reproduce. And if you can attach a product to these fundamental biological drives, bingo, you have a sold product. Buy this rice, you'll have sex. Wear this makeup and you'll simulate the traits that are found in your species as favorable traits. Okay, I admit I didn't make that last one sound terribly sexy, but it's still part of the bigger picture.
Last but not least, deification of athletes. They love their athletes. They put them on pedestals. They pay them large sums of money. I know we don't do that in the States.
You're right, Brad. It is such a conflict with good Christian values to worship these athletes in such a manner. We should all be ashamed to allow such things from these heathens. For as you know, all athletes fall short of the glory that is Tebow. He went on for a while with a few more points here and there that I'd really love to address, but quite frankly, I've already gone on way too long about this guy for now. Looking back on the topics he addressed, the seminar wasn't really at all about atheism. The seminar the whole time straddled between being about explaining how everyone as a whole is sliding into what could be perceived as non-Christian ways and being about atheistic influence tearing this nation apart. And it's obvious which one of those is most likely going to stick. I'm very glad to have the chance to show that Dr. Brad Harab's type of message is out there and to address some of it in my own way. Until next time, I'm Gadget the Layman Atheist, and bitches best stay out of my rice.